Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Live at the Waterhole. Where first up, we've got some lovely elephants here in the Tembe, that's in the KwaZulu province of South Africa. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us? Well, once again, to sit back and watch as the animals come down to quench their thirst and cool off. And as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the Wild Earth website and registering. You can also join the action on X, formerly known as Twitter, use hashtag Wild Earth. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is, wildlife related, send it on through. As we can see, these bulls just pushing their weight around and having a bit of a wrestle there. And I think the younger one has conceded defeat. But maybe it's not over just yet. That bull looks like he's going for a scratch on the termite mound. And now he's after his mate. It's quite overcast in these parts today. A little bit cooler, but still lots of activity, especially from the elephants. Quite a few somber green bulls currently. Yesterday, once again, there were lots and lots of elephants all around. I think the highlight was at Old Donyo with lots of those big bulls, most notably 1 ton and 1 tusk. And here we can see a rather large bull on the left as well. And he's got pretty sizable tusks on him as well. Right, so nice little start here. I'm sure it's some, but we're going to change of place and head to the Greater Kruger Park and catch eye. That's some lovely close-ups of baboons. Hope we haven't caught them a bit. Oh, sounds like they're on top of the box here by the camera. Naughty fellows. Let's hope they don't break the camera. Here's what they're up to. Being naughty, it's just in their nature, especially if they get into any kind of living abodes. They make an absolute mess. It's still lovely to watch out in their natural habitat. It looks like most of them are moved off, but there's still some sound here right behind. It's a shame we can't see them. Yep, there's still some stragglers. Nice walk by that. A couple of Egyptian geese. Ah, there we go. A nice close-up. Hello, you. Couldn't get much closer than that. That's incredible. He's in his thinking pose. And Mercedes Bean first up saying typical baboons. Lol. Laugh out loud. Absolutely. Well, thanks for that, old chap. No, he's not quite done just yet. I think he's quite intrigued about this camera. Let's get a bit of closer up on him. Cold. No, he's giving us the runaround. And off he strolls. You can see it's a male just by that grey backside. The female's looks very much like an open wound, very red and fleshy. So quite easy to tell between the sexes. Right, so it looks like there's also quite a bit of clouds here in these. Might cool things down a bit, but with that being said, let's go and have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. It looks like a nice crisp winter's day. Our winters are like some people's summers, depending on where you stay in the world. But we've jumped on over to Old Donyo, where we've got the big bulls once again. Here we've got one tusk. Four of them. I think there was about 6 yesterday. Getting that mud in behind the ears, cooling off nicely. And Joanne Mello was saying, love the antics of baboons. I could sit and watch them for hours, and I often do. Mesmer. And we're still not sure how this male has lost his other tusk, but it's most likely that he's been fighting with another bull. And I don't know how long ago it happened either. It does seem to yesterday around the area, and also just touching it with his trunk, so it might still be a bit sensitive. It doesn't look overly swollen, but I'm sure it's not a great. It's like having your tooth knocked out. You often notice elephants standing dead still all of a sudden, and it's obvious that there is some kind of discussion happening at that stage, or it's just thinking to itself. It's lovely watching this guy kick the dust and gather it up with his trunk and then throw it over himself. And he's having a good old scratch as well. See there, he's throwing. That last throw was onto that tusk area, which they often do wound, or there's somewhere that's sensitive, throwing sand on it. He is a magnificent beast, and it's a shame that he's lost his one tusk, but at least it gives us a nice, easy way to recognize him as well. The big old chap on the opposite side there as well, showing a bit of affection to that smaller bull next to him. So yesterday there was a bit of concern that this was drying up, and I sort of relayed all the feed that it will be filled up, and then you can see nice and full once more. There's a Masai making an appearance. And you must remember that it would obviously be quite a bit warmer and more humid parts, being closer to the equator. They don't really get much of a winter. So Jive Bunny was speaking about the baboons and saying that having had one follow me into a rest area in the Kruger, I'm not a fan. Those teeth were too close to me for comfort. A member of staff had to scare the baboon out. Yeah, they can be a problem, Jive Bunny, and that's why I think it's always important that we maintain fear of humans. And it always riles me a little bit when I see tourists feeding them. I normally tell them off. But then they sort of think that I'm being nasty. But it's not only for our safety, but it's also for the safety of the animal. Because if they do start becoming a problem, we know that they're going to be put down. So very often, and you'll see in a lot of the national parks and game reserves, where they actually say if you feed the wildlife, you're signing their death warrant because of that exact reason. So we don't want them to associate us with food as far as possible. They obviously do end up getting into the bins and so on. But especially that association of going towards human and getting food from them, that we need to limit. And it does help in keeping the animals scared of us. And then especially the ladies with baboons, the big males, they can be very aggressive, and it's most important to keep them fearful. And Della was also saying, good morning. Nice to see such a close-up of the baboons. Yeah, always nice with the close-ups. And that we can watch the animals with effect on them. I think it did have a little bit of curiosity with the movement of the camera, but that's about it. I think the biggest thing is that they can't smell us. That is vital, because that will change all of their behavior, from the elephants to the baboons. They can smell us in these areas, they will react. I'm glad to see. Looks like the bulls are playing nice today. There was a little bit of disputes yesterday. Nothing serious, but there was a few disagreements. And of course, the giraffe, always patient, waiting their turn. They generally wait until there's not too many elephants here before attempting to come in for a drink. And this giraffe on the right, he's got the typical Christmas tree pose with all of his red-billed oxpeckers lined up all the way up its neck. Right, so a little bit iffy there in a couple of the locations. So we've jumped on over and gone back to the Greater Kruger Park, and we're at Juma. There was an Inyala and a ram impala attacking a bush. There's some more impala down there. We've had lots of activity from the buffalo. A massive herd came here. Seen them a couple of days in a row. And I do believe that there was some lions about, and in fact I think they actually made a kill on one of the buffalo not too far from here. All right, so we'll keep an eye on this spot. Not too much happening for now, just a couple of grazing animals. But I think it's time to change once again, and let's go back to the Tembe Elephant Park. Where the elephants still just keep coming through. Dark-capped bulbul calling now, the toppy as we call them. And the dark-capped bulbuls are actually one of the birds that they get quite familiar with people. We often find them in these wilderness areas where there are lodges. They like heading into the coffee stations and getting stuck into the biscuits. So they're one of those that, like monkeys, also like the coffee station, but they're mainly after the sugar. So that's a slightly different looking chap. got very thick tusks, but not too long. Got quite raggedy ears, though. And a couple of Egyptian geese. There's still one or two bulls around, but not too many now. So Joanne Mello was saying, Ralph, what animal do you fear the most? For me, it's the hippo. Joanne, I would have to say that from all my trails experience and walking in the bush, the one, I wouldn't say that I fear them, but the one that I have the most healthy respect for are elephants. I would have to say, because of their intelligence, and they can show you one body language and just turn on a ticky. So they're a little bit more unpredictable than the other animals, like lions, black rhino, buffalo, judge by their body going to do next. Elephants in general, you can do the same, but I've had so many instances where you think an elephant is very relaxed and they just become aggressive, on a ticky. And so I've always just been more careful with elephants. And sometimes they sneak up on you as well if they get your scent trail and exactly where you've walked and come and investigate you too. But on a real fear scale, out of a black mamba, probably the animal that I'm the most scared of out here. So you'll see me running. It's one of the only times I will run in the bush is when we happen upon a black mamba. Then for me, there's nothing else but to get out of the way and move and leave the area. Whereas with the other animals, we can't run away from them. So we need to generally just look for a safe spot, somewhere with cover, and then stand your ground. But then going on with further sort of that are fearful or that you need to worry about in the bush, I'm not particularly scared of snakes, except for, a black mamba with its aggressive nature. Quite fearful of them. But I'm actually more fearful of spiders because, unlike snakes, we generally sort of work out and know that they are present. Um, Spiders seem to hide in the nooks and crannies, under tables, under chairs. And I used to do an exercise with the students when I was training the field guides that I used to often say to them after a week of them being in camp, I used to say, right, everybody stand up, pick your chair up and turn it over. And underneath, we used to see examples of black widows and six-eyed crab spiders and violin spiders and all sorts. So from that day onwards, everybody was turning their chairs over and maybe they weren't any spiders that they were sitting just on top of. And every now and then you put your hands underneath to move the chair forward or whatever it is, and you're putting your hands right in harm's way. You touch one of those spiders or squash it or something, it's going to bite you. So those are the guys that I'm scared of, and also going out camping of the desert, of the Namib. Like to come and climb into your sleeping bag looking for prey. So the likes of violin spiders, they generally come in there. So I'd say those ones actually I'm more fearful of because of that reason, that they're not as easy to pick up and they're about, and they are particularly dangerous as well. So it's important to to check your clothes if they've been on the ground, your shoes, and even towels that you've been hung in a branch or whatever. Always get into the habit of double checking and making sure before you put your foot into a shoe, your hands into a glove, or your arms into a jacket, and your hands into a pocket, or whatever it be. Double check and make sure. We often used to also have the hairy caterpillars that would literally just walk across the clothes that had been on the washing line. And you put your shirt on, and you get a line of blisters along your shoulders. So, not an animal that I'm scared of. It's another one of those creepy crawlies that can make life a little bit uncomfortable. And you don't even know that they were there. Right, so it's gone a little bit quiet here, so I think we'll move off and let's go to the Madikwe Game Reserve and Tau. Well, we've got a number of animals here. We've got a spur-winged goose on the right there. We've got a couple of waterbuck rams, bulls, should I say, having a go at each other. And there's an impala ram, some blue wildebeest off in the distance. There's some red-billed teals, I think, down on the left. And I think a white-faced whistling duck. There's normally a few of them. They don't generally move alone. So crocodiles about now. You might see them at stage. They normally like to come and sun themselves on, but these waterbuck are continuing their sparring session. So Jive Bunny was saying that the lions reported on a buffalo kill or near to Juma was said to be the Hamilton males together with the Kambulas, plus a black dam male. So that's incredible. It sounds there might be quite a big coalition in the mates, and the lion dynamics are crazy on the Sabi Sand. So yes, in the past there was the legendary Mapojos, and then that was the boys. Now I wonder if we're going to have another group of legendary male lions taking over in those parts. I've Bunny also saying, my goodness, Ralph, the turning chair exercise info is fascinating. Yeah, I think it's important to know exactly what's around you, Jive Bunny. And once you've found a black widow spider underneath your chair, you're going to pretty much check every single time, and that's what I do. And often when it's arrived, they ask me what I'm doing, and I used to just say, no, I'm very OCD, and I just I'm doing it. But I used to wait then, and after a week, get them all to do it, and they were always surprised as to how many creepy crawlies they were all within millimeters from. So I think it's important. Lots of stores at the Sky Hub in Swakop, where the guys working out in the desert and putting their clothes down and whatnot, coming back, putting on their jersey or whatnot, and inside their pockets they find a scorpion or a little viper. So it's really important. There was actually one story of a good friend of mine. He was a herrero, he spoke of his father, who was part of the roads team in Etosha. So they went out and they all had these two-piece overalls. So it's very hot out there in the desert. So working on the road during the day, he took his top part off um, and left it on the ground because he was sweating. And so then went to work. And at the end of the day, he went and he put his shirt back on. And he looked in his pocket, and there was, I don't know what snake, I think it was a puff adder or something, in his top pocket. And they were working about 5 kilometers away from the compound where they stayed. And he literally ran all the way back to the compound. And when he arrived, he started shouting, snake. And they were like, where? He said, no, in my pocket. So they all started beating him with sticks. I don't know why he didn't just take it off. But yeah, there's sometimes, people have real fears of snakes, and especially in Africa. So yeah, I did find that neat though. But yeah, important your pockets, check your shoes, and everything else that might just hold some of these little creatures. So these impala now having a nice go at each other. It does happen that sometimes they get stuck, and then they're really vulnerable to predation. Springbok as well. And I've actually seen some that have died literally just from being caught together, and they couldn't, move from that. They were totally locked up. So Catherine was saying definitely hippo for me. Too many close encounters with them. I had a violin spider in my tent. That's no fun. It refused to leave, so sadly had to kill it. Yeah, Catherine. You know, I always try and get any of these dangerous creatures out and away from my personal environment. And if it's not possible, unfortunately, either me or him. So, but I do try my best. But there are the occasions when there's no option. So there's just a little bit of tech difficulties with some of the cameras. They seem to be freezing. But anyway, we'll still keep jumping around. Changed. We haven't left Madikwe, but we've gone down south to Jamala. And as always, it seems like the turnstile of elephants is oncoming here. And nice to see a breeding herd with lots of little youngsters. It's always fun to watch. Somebody just getting vocal there, letting out half a trumpet. But yes, Catherine, I actually have to say to you that hippos are one of my, one of the animals that I am rather scared of as well, especially when I'm on a boat. I'm not generally too worried about them when they're on land, but I do make sure that I don't get between them and the water. That's always a recipe for disaster, and you're going to get flattened. So, but in the water, on the boats, I've done a lot of fishing in areas where there are hippos, especially with a small boat. I always just want to be sure that we are going to be able to get away from them. But sometimes they do pop up near to you when you least expect it, or you misidentify them as a rock. And I've done that on Pongolapoort Dam or the Josini Dam, thinking we're going to go on over to those rocks and catch some tiger fish. And the closer we got, the more the rocks started moving. And we got within about 30 meters when we got charged. So we had to hot-foot it out of there. But yes, I think if hippos get you in a boat, there's not much chance of you surviving. And then, of course, crocodiles in the water. Uh, you've got to keep away from those edges of the river. If you're in the likes of the Zambezi or in the Okavango, teeming with crocodiles. You won't catch me swimming there. We do sometimes go on some sandbanks where it's very shallow, just try to cool off a bit, or where it's very deep, but it's almost just a quick dip, jump in and get back on the boat. But in those few seconds that you're in the water, you have the real fear in you, and makes you get out even quicker. Can you hear a little pearl-spotted owlet calling off in the distance somewhere again? You often hear them during the day, particularly in winter. I'm not sure why, but I have noticed this. In summer, when it's very hot, generally you don't hear them calling during the day, but it's in winter that you do. Okay, so we are ping-ponging around a little bit, but that's always good. Sometimes stay a little bit longer than other times, but I think we're going to change again, and let's go back to the Tembe Elephant Park. With the somber green bulls still calling, and a lovely shot on this beautiful elephant. The more coming in and having a nice scratch there. So Mercedes Bean was asking, Ralph, why do you suppose there's yet to be a dominant coalition or pride at Djuma? Well, Mercedes Bean, I would have to say that it's it's constantly changing with all the concentration of big predators there. And it's just sometimes by chance that you start to get these coalitions that form up and group up, and you know they sometimes just have to almost have some dominant moments that then galvanize the team, because you know that is where it will really be to their advantage then. So, and with those dynamics, with the big predators in the likes of the Sabi Sands, it will just be by chance that eventually you'll have a coalition forming once more, and with the dominance that they do enjoy, then it sets them apart, and they'll sort of reign for a much longer time. But it seems like there is potential for a big coalition in the makings, so it will be interesting to watch. And Bill, Myrtle Beach, I think it's Bill the Bull, welcome aboard once again, saying the female black widow is very defensive of her nest and will bite easily. I know. I hope that's not because you've been bitten by one, Bill. But yeah, I tend to keep far away from them as much as possible. And wherever I see them inside my abode, they're going to have to either vacate or suffer the unfortunate consequences. Serengeti Sunrise saying good morning from Michigan. I hope you're having a lovely morning, Serengeti Sunrise. Welcome aboard. Joanne Mello saying, I admire all wildlife from a distance. This is their home and world too. Absolutely, Joanne. I do agree with you. And that's why I say, as far as possible, I try to shift animals out of my abode, especially when I'm living out in these wilderness areas or they're on safari with guests, whatever it might be. But I'm not going to let a black mamba enjoy itself behind my toilet or inside my bed. He's either got to leave in whatever way possible, or ultimately he'll have to take things further. But I always try my best to get them out and moved away safely. It's not possible. Well, you've got to think of the safety of yourself and everyone around you. I've had many occasions in the Kruger Park with students, on the day that they arrive, going into their tent, and there's a Mozambique spitting cobra in the back of their tent. But us being trained, we are able to remove them, and so we do our best there. Get them into a box and then drive them as far away as possible and release them back into the wild. Mindy Tillapore saying, love the swagger Ellies get when they're heading towards water. It's one of my favorite things as well, Mindy. You can almost see the excitement growing as they get closer. And it's generally going downhill towards water, as you can see here, the slope towards, the drainage line. And so they pick up with that, but you can see they're getting happy, they're getting excited, they're about to be able to quench their thirst. So I think they just love water so much that it is part and parcel of the exciting parts of their day. Quite incredible. A friend of mine who stays on a farm down in the Eastern Cape, sort of towards the Great Fish River, he had a dog just recently, a bulbul, that got bitten by a puff adder twice. One bit him on the head and one on his chest. And they are the fastest striking snake in the world, with one of the most potent cytotoxin of all the snakes. And they're very dangerous because they're ambush hunters. So they lay still, and when you are bitten by them, generally, it's because you stand on them. But in this case, the dogs had found this one, and he's the big dominant dog of the pack. So ran in to sort of help out the pack because they were all barking at it, and ran in a bit too hard because the snake then picked him on the head and on his chest. And for the next month, he was at the vet. I think he's still going to the vet, but landed up that his skin was literally falling off of him. They really struggled to keep him alive. It's massive swelling and then rotting of the meat. It's a terrible thing to be bitten by a puff adder. So that's why you've got to be really careful and try and at least limit the kind of contact that you have with these kind of snakes. And just like what we always used to do out in the bush was the washing areas where there was a lot of water. It did attract a lot of frogs, and then that attracts the snakes. So we used to make real drainage and make sure that there was no standing water, make sure that there was no frogs to bring in the snakes. And then also clearing the bushes around your house, and that's very important. So that they don't hide up right next to your perimeter. And then obviously your food waste management, because that brings in the rodents, which in turn attracts the snakes once again. So that's where we sort of mitigate these kind of risks by limiting the amount of sort of bait or food to bring these kind of serpents in and close to your abode. Now, Joanne Mello asking, which is bigger, a black mamba or a rock python when fully grown? I would say if you're talking in pure, size, definitely the African rock python gets, because they get much thicker. They probably get to a similar length. I don't think that they really stop growing. So they can get huge. And from the weight as well, I think we'd have to say the rock python. I think a black mamba might grow longer in length, but it definitely wouldn't have that thickness of an African rock python, which become huge. And with them being constrictors as well, they need that sort of weight and muscle to be able to squeeze the life out of their prey. But I have seen a nearly 4 meter length black mamba. So I think they get very, very long. But they obviously don't use that pure muscle to kill their prey. They've got the potent neurotoxin. And Sandy Franklin, 69, asking, how long can an elephant go without water? So Sandy Franklin, in general, they can't go more than a day or two without water. But it all depends on what they are actually used to and accustomed to. And I always refer to us as humans when I get asked these kind of questions for the same species of animal that is adapted to its different environments. So elephants here in the tropics, where there's lots of water, they wouldn't be able to last very long at all. But the same species of the desert elephants, they can go for up to a week without water. And they are a little bit more adapted to the environment. You could say like the Khoisan people, or the Bushmen as we call them, they would also be able to survive in a desert conditions with less water and food than most people would be able to survive. They apparently were able to expand their stomachs, so they were almost able to gorge themselves when they did kill animals, and eat a lot of meat, more so than most people would, and then be able to live for longer without eating as a result of how much they'd eaten there. And then also going with little to no water for long periods of time as well. And the heat and all of that combined. You look at the Eskimos, they'd be able to survive in freezing cold conditions that not many people would be able to survive. If you look at the Sherpas in the Himalayas, born with more white blood cells and so are able to tolerate higher altitudes easily. And so I think, all the same species, but highly adapted to their specific environments, especially, through the generations and if they've lived there for a very long time. So I think if we also had to say that if you had to take these elephants here from Tembe and throw them in the desert in Namibia, I don't think they'd do well at all. They'd probably die pretty quickly without having enough water, mostly, but also very little food and slim pickings, and they'd have to learn fast. But if you took the desert elephants and put them here, I think they would be able to survive, albeit with very different conditions. I don't think that they would do as well initially as the rest of the elephants, because they'd have to learn the new environment and then different types of plants, etc. But they'd have lots of water, so they'd have time to learn. But in the extreme desert environment, they wouldn't have time to learn before they'd be dead. So you see this guy, he's just digging a little bit on the edge of the waterhole there. I'm wondering if he's trying to get some mud. But I think he's being pursued by this other bull. Maybe he wants to pick a fight. So Della was saying, wow, that Ilya is a set of tusks like daggers. Yeah, and you always have to think that much like humans, you do have these genetic traits that will go through into the next generation. So it's like a friend of mine, his wife has got quite a big gap in the front of her teeth, which, it's like Madonna, that little sort of specific gap. And the child has also got exactly the same. And when you look at elephants, very often those traits can pass through into the offspring as well. So a big tusker, that's why we say those genetics and the traits that come with them very often pass through into the offspring as well. So there's particular tusks too that you might not necessarily big tusks, but thin ones that point downwards, some that point almost straight out and horizontal, and some that one is up and one is down, and that's what just makes it interesting and unique, and not everybody the same. Then LG7 was asking, afraid to ask, but have you ever had a snake crawl over you while sleeping at night? I haven't had one crawl over me, LG7, but I have had one land on the bed while I've been sleeping, falling out of the thatch roof, and it was myself and my wife, and it landed on the bed. It was actually a snouted cobra. But in these kind of situations, it's always very important not to panic. Panic, I think, is the biggest killer. Because if you react in a panic mode, I know it's difficult or easy to say, but difficult in the scenario. Even if you get a fright, you need to sort of hold your composure and not make abrupt movements, because that's when the animal will get into a defensive pose. So I just sort of grabbed my wife and made her not move, and the snake slithered off, fell onto the ground, and then I was able to get up, and get it going outside of the door. But I've also been camping out in the bush as well with guests, and I often sleep on my bedroll next to the fire because it keeps me aware of what's going on, and then I can also just keep any animals away, from the guest's tent, and so on. I've had lions walk right past me within a meter from where I am, and almost breathing, right over me, and just froze. But I kept my eye on them, and I was obviously ready to move But just because there was no panic, they literally just sniffed at me and off they walked. I've also woken up with an elephant feeding in the tree right above my head. He knew I was there. He could smell me. And he did his thing. I had a couple of leaves and things fall on me while he was feeding, but I actually eventually just enjoyed the moment. And off he strolled. And it was absolutely amazing. And then I showed all the guests the tracks in the morning, as with the lions. Um, so, very important. And when you're out in the bush as well, especially at night, one of the best tools you can have is an extremely strong torch. And you get some amazing torches now. They're very small, but they were very potent, very strong. And at night, this is probably your best weapon, because any animal comes towards you, you shine that light straight in its eyes, and they won't come towards you anymore because they can't see behind the light. So whether it's a lion or a hippo, just don't do it with elephants. They get angry. They don't like torches shone in their eyes. So that actually makes them angry. But with the rest of the animals, shine it straight in their eyes, hyenas, lions, whatever it is, and you can then, use that as an excellent tool. So just a little tip. I've also been lying next to the fire, and I've felt something on my arm because it's sort of very hot in the desert. And so, even at night, sometimes in winter, in the rocky desert, it's only in the sandy desert that it doesn't hold the heat at night. But in Damaraland, it can still be very hot at night. And a scorpion was on my arm, and I didn't panic. I just literally slowly brushed it off, and off it went. So it didn't sting me or anything like that. But yeah, it was a close call. But you just got to try and not panic. So Catherine was saying, how do you not panic when a snake falls onto you? Are there courses for that? Um, I wouldn't say there's courses, Catherine, but it's just the more you're in the bush, the more you realize that panic is going to get you in trouble. You're going to have more adverse reactions from animals than if you don't. So, I think it's just conditioning. Um, Being out there and being exposed to these kind of wild animals, you know, or you realize that the kind of body language that and you need to feel good in yourself and show good posture, whether it's with an elephant or a lion. If you are showing fear, the animals can see it. They can't smell it. They can see it in your body language. And then they'll see that they have the upper hand. And that's always when you're going to get yourself into more trouble than you would have if you show, you pump your chest out. It's not something that you want to be overly aggressive. It's just that you're not scared. And when you're faced with a situation that you could potentially panic, that's the kind of mindset that you need to have. How am I going to get out of this without getting bitten? And the best way is to not panic and to, not scare the animal as well, because then they're going to defend themselves. And the best form of defense, especially if you're a venomous snake, is to bite. So that's what you want to avoid, and you don't want to threaten it in any way. And waving your arms around and jumping and screaming and shouting, that is obviously a very aggressive response, even though that you're being scared. So the animal is going to react. And if you're very close to it could very easily end badly. So that's where it's just having a calm demeanor in general, and it takes time and conditioning to get into this frame of mind. Okay, so beautiful stop in here at Tembe. Nice with the elephants and also with these impala. But I think we're going to change of place again, and we're going to go back to Tau. With a nice group of kudu. So all the girls, for now, looks like. Those very funnel-like ears. Always on the alert. was either yesterday or the day before, we actually saw a very old female shaman. She only had one ear. I don't know how that had happened, whether it's as a result of something like mange, a skin condition, or if she had had it bitten off by something. See those stripes on the side of their bodies, very often with sort of thicket animals and browsers that stay in not really are out in the plains, more in the thickets and in the bush. It's a way for them to break up the outline of their bodies. So that is termed disruptive markings. And you see it with the Nyala as well. And they also prefer those thicket environments. It does make it more difficult for predators to sort of make out head or tail of the animal. And it does help them blend in terms of camouflage. So, and with them preferring the bush and the thickets, they are quite nervous when they're out in the open because they're not really sprinters. They're more agile and be able to move through the bushes. Oh, there's something jumping around in the tree here. I wonder if it's a monkey. But that makes them a little bit more nervous when they're out in the open because they would potentially be more susceptible to predation and be run down a lot easier than the likes of wildebeest and zebra, who are quite adapted to living out in the open. So the kudu might feel a little bit safer now that these wildebeest are coming to join them. More eyes and ears. See some of them making life easier for themselves and going down on their ankles. There's a yellow-breasted apelus calling now. Some would say apelus. Tomato, tomato. And you'll see also very often when the sort of plains game, when they lie out in the open like this, very often there's animals facing in all different directions. So that does help sort of protect the group and having eyes all around, not all staring in one direction. The likes of white rhino, for instance, very often when they go down to sleep, and they also very sociable. Sometimes you can have up to 5 in a family group, mother with her calves of different ages, and they'll often lie top to toe. Oh, there's our culprit, a little vervet on the fence. What's he up to? He found something. I hope you don't get shocked, buddy. He's a youngster. But you know what he might be doing? Because it's very often birds that will use these wires and put on their insects, their caches, the likes of the fiscal shrikes, common fiscals. They cache insects and they'll put them on spikes. They use thorns, but they also use barbed wire, any kind of thing like that. And then they spike the insects on there and they can come and feed on them at will. But they do produce a bit of like biltong. But the monkeys, then, being the opportunists that they are, they also go and feed on that and steal their food. But I hope the lodge staff are around because I think that monkey's headed into the lodge. Oh, there's a few of them. If they get inside, they're going to make a mess. Looks like they're having a ball, though, using this as a trampoline. So obviously wouldn't show this, especially if there's guests about. But if there were, I don't think these monkeys would be having so much fun. That one relaxing on the couch. Just goes to show, even wildlife like their creature comforts. We've had leopards lying on the chairs outside as well. When I was on the Amakala Game Reserve and they had released the three amigos, who are quite habituated to people, they came into our compound and one of them was lying on an outside couch, thoroughly enjoying himself. You just don't want to walk out and a leopard's lying on your couch. That's always a danger. You don't want them hanging around the guest areas too much. So you sort of try and chase them out. Don't want to encourage that kind of behavior. With monkeys, it doesn't matter how much you chase them, they're always going to come back. They're naughty. So changed up again, and we've headed on down south once more to Jamala. Ellie's still going to keep us entertained here, I'm sure. Now, Erica Oldno was saying, Ralph, you've given me the heebie-jeebies about leaving for the farm this weekend. That wasn't the point of that, Erica, so I'm sorry about that. But it's all just that we can't stick our heads in the sand. We've got to know and realize that these animals are there. Luckily, I'm not sure where you are going to the farm, but for us, being winter, generally less activity from the insects and the arachnids as well as with the reptiles. So, although they are there, they're generally not moving around as much, so you have less chance of running into them. But I think it's important. Don't forget, Erica, to have a look under your table and under your chairs, especially the outside ones. But I don't want to give you a paranoia now. So Mindy Tillapore is asking, which animals out here in the bush would you say have a social structure most similar in complexity to humans? Mindy, I would have to say without a shadow of a doubt, elephants. Absolutely. Because they sort of, they live in their little family groups, which we'd call the breeding herd. Okay, maybe slightly different in that the bulls are generally solitary and move out on their own and only join the family units, when they're after the females. But they still live in their family unit. They've got their herds, they've got their clans that I would say is an extended family. that you may have, aunties and uncles, etc. And then they have tribes, which is clans. Is obviously a few herds form a clan, and a few clans form a tribe. So that's like your village or the town where you come from. And all of the emotion and the social sort of complexities between them, from the youngsters to the adults, it does reflect a lot of what I think a perfect human social structure would be like. Um, and it's obviously all dynamic, it's all unique, and it's all dependent upon the different characters of the individuals. But the entire social structure, I would say, is, in my opinion, the closest that we have to humans. Now, Leander, director, asking where would I rank chimpanzees? So yeah, of course, I would have to put them up there with, similar to human social structure. We could also then talk about baboons. Um, but I was obviously thinking of African wildlife, and particularly the areas that we watch. So we don't see any chimpanzees, but yeah, that I mean the primates are obviously the closest, as we fall part of that group as well, in terms of the social structures. But baboons, I think, not quite the same as us, where they've really got a gang of males that rule with an iron fist. Um, Maybe more so monkeys, where it's a little bit more spread in the leadership roles. So, yeah, maybe between elephants and monkeys. So, Taxi Lady saying, I do believe humans give off pheromones, and if you are fearful, animals do pick up on this, and depending on which animal it is, they act accordingly. I must agree with you, Taxi Lady. Absolutely. You will give off pheromones, but I think the immediate response of an animal has a lot to do with your body language. And I think you can get away with being scared, but pretending not to be, and showing, the body language of, sort of being aggressive. I think you can still get away with that, and the animal will react towards your body language as well. But definitely, there will be a combination, especially if you're very scared. You're going to show the submissive body language as well. So it could definitely be a combination, I must agree. Then we can also, with more sociable animals, we can go to the likes of mongoose, especially the sociable ones. The not the striped. Shame, I'm losing now. But the sociable mongoose, they also live in their little family units, and going in the ground and staying together as a family, foraging together, and they sort of protect their territory around that. It's all about resources and food, etc. So I think that's quite similar in that vein. But I think on a complex level, and social structures, I would definitely still lean towards elephants. So most of the ellies now slowly moving off on that elephant highway. There's quite a few birds coming in now to have a drink as well. There's an odd drongo flitting in and out, doing a bit of hawking, probably catching insects and then going back to a perching spot. Little chin spot batters calling there as well. And that one youngster, he's over by that favoured scratching post. And he's having a good old scratch himself now. It seems there is a breeding herd that's moved in on the right. Tiny little baby there. There's also a few zebra just moving in. Oh, here come some warthogs running down the elephant highway. Look like they're thirsty. They're going to come in for a drink. Maybe a wallow and even a scratch as well. Always lovely watching warthogs at the waterhole as well. Very comical. Much like baboons. I could watch them all day. Oh, and there's more coming. And the zebbies coming to join the warthogs. You can hear a red or a Natal spurfowl making a racket, and it's joined also by the red-billed buffalo weavers. Bit of a herd of blue wildebeest. I think that piggy wants a wallow, going into the water now. Now, this is a wonderful scene. Nice mix of animals. Everybody quenching their thirst. See that one little piggy rolling around, he's trying to wallow, but he's mostly out of the water. He needs to get a bit deeper in there. And here the wildebeest, living up to their namesake, gnewing. Now, people often ask, why do the zebra bob their heads like that? There's a couple of reasons. One is to keep the flies out of their noses, and another one is because it's comfortable. Much like when you walk and you swing your arms, when they walk, to rock their head backwards and forwards helps them sort of with their balance and to walk comfortably. So it's very similar and equates to the way that we swing our arms when we walk. This piglet now, not the piglet, the pig, getting full of mud. There we go. And of course, get on over to the rocks and get a good old scratch. They obviously don't want to go too deep because there's always the potential for crocodiles. So they like to stay just on the edges. And this guy getting stuck in there now. While we're watching him, I just want to remind you that about the Amakhala private safari, which will be taking place in December. And you have the opportunity of coming with me in person out on safari. And that will be to discover the wild heart of South Africa on a safari adventure with myself. And there'll also be another one hosted by Eric, who is the naturalist on Amakhala as well. There'll be limited space available for 6 lucky guests on each safari. So if you'd like to find out more, go onto the Wild Earth website and click on travel. So is that it? Maybe it's had enough. I might be going off for a scratch now. That's generally the way that things go. Do a wallow, get the mud all over you, and then go and scratch. Oh, there's a nice kudu bull. Couple of little impala off on the left as well. It's not a massive kudu, but starting to mature nicely. Still got a bit to grow. So when you look at kudu bulls and the turns in their horns, I mean, they've got spectacular spiraled horns, but they only start to grow when they're about 6 and between 6 and 12 months old. And then the number of turns on the spirals is related to their age. So when a male is 2 years old, they will have one twist. And only at the age of 6 years of age will they have the full 2.5 twists. So when they get to 3 twists, then you're talking 8 to 10 years, and they generally only live to about 12 years of age. So that one, it's got one and a half. So that we would then say it's probably around 3 or 4 years old. I'd say about 4. something's happened to scare everyone off here. This is sort of leading onto an airstrip, so there's potential for even planes landing. All right, so we're jumping backwards and forwards in Madikwe, but time to head on back to Tau. With one of the crocodiles out basking in the sun, catching some nice winter rays. Being winter, obviously the water's pretty chilly, and being ectothermic doesn't really allow them to have much energy, and they'll be quite lethargic if they just stay in the water. So coming out onto the bank and just warming up and getting some energy. Maybe it will be active a little bit later. So Timothy was asking, until what age is a kudu considered a juvenile? Now, Timothy, they fully mature at about 2 to 2.5 years of age, but that's sexually mature, but they still do continue growing their horns right through their lives, really. But anything under about 4 years of age, I would say between 3 and 4 would be considered a juvenile, and then you've got the very young, which is less than 2 years of age. So yeah, I would say the young up to 2, and then juveniles up to about 4, and then adults from there. So Alex G asking, can crocs bend their tails at any point? Is it jointed? Yes, it is. It's very much like a vertebra all the way down. So there's numerous joints, and they're actually able to move that tail much like a fish moves its tail and use that to propel itself in the water. I also know the internal structure of crocodiles. I've actually eaten it, and so when you do eat them, you actually eat the tail, and each piece is one of those pieces of very vertebra-like bones. And I must say, it tastes exactly like a mixture between chicken and fish. It's it's a it's a crazy taste that it's almost like taking a piece of fish and a piece of chicken and sticking it in your mouth at the same time, because you can taste both. It's uncanny. It's incredible. Blue wildebeest, keeping an eye on the croc, as you do. See, the animals know, even though it's dead still, it could be dead, but he knows to be careful of those chaps. So Joanne Mello saying, yes, a croc, really like them. I did too, but very often see them just like this, especially in winter, not really up to much. There's a black-winged stilt on the right, just foraging around in the water. Now the zebra is coming to investigate and see what's happening here as well. This one in the front here looks like it's suspiciously pregnant. It does look a little bit bigger than usual. Hope none of you guys get stuck in the mud. Be careful. So a lovely line up here now. Always love it when the zebra come down to drink and they do it in a line like this, especially if you've got your camera out. The beautiful reflections in the water there as well now. And of course the tail swishes are constant, keeping those flies away. Oh, don't get stuck. And another contender to go into the mud and get a drink. Got to keep an eye on that crocodile though. So while we're watching the zebra, I thought we'll just delve into a little bit of zebra myths and legends. This is from the Safari Center, which is a company based in Kenya. But they speak of long ago, animals were new in Africa, and the weather was dry and hot, and water was scarce. The little water remained was in a few watering holes. One such small hole during those times of drought was guarded by a boisterous and arrogant baboon. It forbade any of the animals from drinking at his pool because he self-appointed himself as lord of the water. At night, the baboon struck a fireplace for warmth by the waterhole and chased off others. African legend has it that one evening a zebra and his son came to have a drink of water after a journey, and the baboon was sitting next to the waterhole by his fire. In those days, zebra didn't have stripes. They wore coats of white fur. Sure, this crocodile is just about being walked on, and he may be going to start hissing to try and ward them off. Oh, hello. Jeepers, taking on an elephant. I think you best move off into the water, buddy, otherwise you're going to get trampled. But they seem to have just moved off, and they're not really bothering with him. They do make a hissing noise, much like a snake might. It's like a it's to ward, because he wouldn't want to be trampled. He gets squashed. But he wouldn't want to do that to a bull with a bit of attitude to him, because I think he would have got thrown in any given direction. Wow, that's amazing. All right, so I'll carry on the story in a minute. I just want to see what happened with this crocodile, because that youngster could quite easily step back onto him, and we might have something happen between the two of them. And if he does anything to that calf, one of the females is going to have something to say about it. I think he's going to get himself out of the way. Ooh, I think the youngster just realized that he was there now. So the crocodile obviously definitely scared of these elephants, because it could, quite easily get thrown or stood on and squashed. The elephants aren't seemingly too bothered. Right. So I think we carry on with the story. So the zebra didn't have stripes at that stage, and they just had coats of white fur. And on seeing the zebras, the baboon barked, "Go away, this is my pool, and the water is mine." The thirsty zebras looked up and saw the angry baboon. The son shouted back. So the infuriated baboon challenged them in a fine fury. "Then you must fight me for the water if you want to drink," and attacked the young zebra. In a moment, a struggle ensued, and they were locked in combat. The two fought savagely. That seemed like an eternity. Tempers flare back and forth. They were fighting until at last the zebra kicked the baboon powerfully. The baboon landed in amongst the rocks of the cliff behind the waterhole. The baboon landed smack on his feet with a mighty thud, taking its bottom hair clean off. To this very day, the baboon has a bare patch on his bottom where he landed, and the baboon still continues to live high up amongst the rocks, nursing his bald patch on his backside where he landed. They spent their days challenging intruders and barking defiance at all strangers. And when they walk around, they still hold their tails aloft because of the pain of the bare patch on their bottoms where they landed. The terrified zebra was all tired and bruised after kicking the baboon so hard, not looking where he was going. The zebra tripped on the fireplace that sent burning embers flying in the air, and some of them fell on the zebra's white coat. That left him with black marks across the white fur, and that's how the zebra got its stripes. The injuries and shock sent the zebra galloping and dashing away back to the savannah, where it has lived ever since. And he did come to like his stripes, as they gave him a very distinguished look. Now, Mercedes Bean was saying that's one brave croc. Yeah, absolutely. It's, I think, just trying to lay low. Bit more movement now. I think the crocodile's feeling a bit sandwiched in now by them. So we've seen it a couple of times with a bit of interaction between the crocs and it's all been quite similar to this. They've nearly walked on top of it, and then it's just either getting out the way and hissing a bit. That's about all. Yeah, Bill Myrtle Beach saying it's all fun and games until one grabs your trunk. Absolutely. Whether it's an alligator or a crocodile, you got to be careful. And the one nearly got grabbed there on its trunk. Sure. So they're all marching past the crocodile now. All's well that ends well. Doesn't seem like anybody's too bothered. And the crocodile can go back to his sunbathing. So Joanne Miller was saying, thank you, Wild Earth and Ralph. Have a good weekend. And we wish the same to you, Joanne. Lovely weekend to not only you, to all the viewers as well. And I hope you have lots of wildlife encounters and you get out there. Little black-winged stilts are hard at work. And there's the odd blacksmith plover just running around the rocks. Little ducks here in the foreground. Looks like the ellies might be moving around onto the other side. I wonder if they're going to go for a bit of a mud bathe. And off they saunter, leaving the crocodile all on its own once more. I think it's happier that way. All right, now that they've moved off and all is well, I think we'll do the same. And let's go to the Tembe Elephant Park. Looks like all the elephants want to hide from us at the end of the show, but maybe there's some more about. You never know when another one's going to come into the area as well. I like this spot. So slowly heading towards the end of the show once more. But there's still lots of wildlife action coming your way, so don't go anywhere. I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's been a different one, as always. I enjoyed those baboons, nice up close and personal. And the elephants with that crocodile. There's a young Nyala bull. And it was a southern boo-boo that was just calling. There. Very nice call of theirs. There's a dark-capped bulbul. There's also a somber green bull. It's just called now. That's him. This chap is rather nervous. But it does pay to be nervous around the water. So the Sunset Safari coming later on this afternoon. Don't miss out. It's always exciting to see what the naturalists can find and what new leopards, lions, wild dogs, hyenas, what is happening with all the different predators on Djuma. It sounds like there's quite a bit of shake-up that has been happening recently. So stay tuned to watch and see what's happening there. And of course, Live at the Waterhole will be back on again tomorrow, same time, same place. But it won't be me this time. You'll have a surprise newbie. Somebody else, regardless. But I wish you all a good weekend. And as I always say, give it horns, bush greetings. Cheers, everyone.
So much for joining us once again for our highlight show here, coming directly from the northern Sabi Sands at Juma Lodge. And my name is Cedric, and behind the camera with me we've got Muscles and Paul.